The message came on a Tuesday. Scientists at the SETI array in New Mexico detected it first. A clear, unmistakable pattern that couldn't be anything but artificial. Within hours, the news spread across Earth. We were not alone. Jack Sullivan watched the announcement from his small apartment in Virginia. At 42, the Major had seen enough of life to be skeptical. He sipped his coffee and ran a hand through his graying hair as the president spoke about a new era for humanity. 3 months later, Jack found himself on a shuttle headed for orbit. The aliens, calling themselves the Galactic Confederation, had arrived with massive ships and technology beyond human understanding. They invited Earth to join their alliance of 17 intelligent species. The world's governments selected representatives to meet with them. Jack, with his extensive combat experience and level head, was chosen as military advisor. Major Sullivan, please prepare for docking. The pilot called over the intercom. Jack checked his uniform one last time. 20 years in the military had left its mark on him. A scar across his left cheek from the Third Middle Eastern conflict, stiff movements from an old shoulder wound, eyes that had seen too much death. Still, he stood tall as the shuttle connected with the enormous Confederation vessel. The alien delegation waited in a large, bright room. Jack saw beings of various shapes, some vaguely humanoid, others completely foreign to human experience. Their translator devices hummed softly as Earth's representatives entered. "Welcome, humans," said a tall, blue-skinned being who introduced himself as Ambassador Zrel. "We are pleased to begin formal discussions." Over the next week, Jack attended meetings where Earth's representatives learned about the Confederation. They discussed trade, technology, and cultural exchange. But when Jack brought up military cooperation and defense, the aliens exchanged looks that even across species seemed amused. "Major Sullivan," Zrel said during one session, "your species' focus on physical combat is quite primitive." Another alien, a floating creature named Ilara, added, "The Confederation resolved actual physical warfare 3 centuries ago." "Then how do you handle conflicts?" Jack asked. "Not everyone can always agree. Advanced AI simulations," explains Zrel. "When disputes arise, we run projections to determine optimal outcomes. The losing party accepts the results without bloodshed. You let computers decide who wins a war." Jack couldn't hide his disbelief. "We allow logic to prevail over emotion," Zrel replied. "Your species still relies on, what do you call it? Gut instinct, physical bravery. These are outdated concepts." Later that evening, Jack joined other human representatives in their shared quarters. Dr. Linda Green, a renowned physicist, noticed his frustration. "They think we're cavemen with rockets," Jack said, staring out at the stars. Linda nodded. "They've made that clear, but they still want us in their club." "Because we have resources they want," said Ambassador Carlos Diaz. "Not because they respect us." Jack frowned. "Did you notice how they glossed over my questions about actual threats? Who's to say their computer models work against an enemy that doesn't play by their rules?" Major Sullivan called a voice from the doorway. A small, insect-like alien stood there. "Ambassador Zrel requests your presence." Jack followed the alien to a private chamber where Zrel waited with several other Confederation members. "Major, we've completed our assessment," Zrel said. "Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Confederation." "Provisional?" Jack asked. "Yes, your species needs time to mature. In the meantime, we will help guide your development." Jack felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression neutral. "And our military will be gradually phased out as unnecessary," said another alien. "Violence is inefficient." Jack thought of the battles he'd fought, the friends he'd lost, and the hard lessons learned through blood and sacrifice. These aliens had no idea what humans were capable of when pushed. "I understand," he said, though he didn't. Not really. As he left the meeting, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the Confederation's perfect, peaceful galaxy wasn't as secure as they believed, And someday they might need exactly what they were dismissing. Soldiers who knew how to fight real battles, not simulations. Earth had joined the stars. But Jack Sullivan suspected it wouldn't be the last time the galaxy underestimated humanity. 5 years passed since Earth joined the Galactic Confederation. Humans had spread to 3 colony planets, learning alien technologies and adapting to life among the stars. Most people embraced the new era of peace and prosperity. Jack Sullivan, now Earth's senior ambassador, was not one of them. Jack sat in his office on Proxima Station, reviewing reports that troubled him deeply. 3 cargo ships had vanished near the Orion Arm in the past month. Before that, a research vessel with 30 crew members disappeared without sending any distress signal. The Confederation officials called these incidents navigational errors or piracy. Jack didn't believe them. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Olivia Martinez stood in the doorway, her posture military straight despite wearing civilian clothes. At 35, she had the lean, tough look of the Navy SEAL she once was before becoming head of security for Earth's embassy. "You wanted to see me, Ambassador?" she asked. "Come in and close the door," Jack said. "And drop the ambassador stuff. It's just us here." Olivia sat down across from him. "You look worried, Jack." He pushed a tablet toward her. "Have you seen these reports?" She scrolled through the data, her expression growing more serious with each swipe. 7 ships missing in 6 months, all in the same sector. "This isn't random." "That's what I think too. But our Confederation friends insist their defense systems would detect any organized threat." Olivia snorted. "Their precious algorithms again. They think everything can be predicted and calculated." Jack nodded. "I tried talking to Ambassador Israel yesterday. He practically patted me on the head like I was a child afraid of the dark." "So what do we do?" Olivia asked. "I have a contact on Novaterra colony. He says ships have gone missing there too, but it's not in any official reports." Olivia leaned forward. "They're hiding something. Or they genuinely don't believe there's a pattern." Jack stood and walked to the window. The vast blackness of space stretched before him, dotted with distant stars and passing ships. The Confederation hasn't fought a real war in centuries. Maybe they've forgotten how to recognize one coming. "We haven't," Olivia said simply. Jack turned to her. "I need you to take a small ship to the edge of the Orion Arm. Officially, you'll be conducting routine security assessments for our colonies. And unofficially, find out what's happening to those ships." 2 weeks later, Olivia's ship approached the coordinates where the last vessel had vanished. She had insisted on minimal crew, just herself and 2 former Marines she trusted, Sam Briggs and Alan Foster. "Anything on scanners?" she asked, checking her own screens. Sam shook his head. "Nothing unusual, just the standard background radiation and some space dust." "Wait," Alan said suddenly. "I'm picking up something. Debris field at Mark 227. Olivia adjusted their course. As they approached, the ship's lights illuminated twisted metal and broken components floating in the emptiness of space. It was all that remained of a large transport vessel. "This wasn't a navigation error," Sam said quietly. Olivia studied the debris pattern. The hull was breached from the outside. Multiple points of impact. She pointed to a section of torn metal. "Look at those edges. Clean cuts. Weapons fire." Alan's voice came from the communication station. "Lieutenant, I'm picking up a weak signal. Some kind of beacon." "Can you trace it?" "Yes, but it's coming from somewhere beyond the edge of Confederation space." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. "Record everything. We need to get this information back to Jack." As they prepared to leave, Sam called out, "Movement at our 3 o'clock. Fast approaching." On the view screen, a dark shape emerged from behind a large piece of debris. It didn't match any Confederation design Olivia had ever seen. The ship was sleek, predatory, with what looked like organic components fused with technology. "Evasive maneuvers," Olivia ordered. "Get us out of here now." As their ship accelerated away, Olivia caught one last glimpse of the alien vessel. Its design wasn't just unfamiliar. It felt wrong somehow, like looking at something that shouldn't exist. She knew with absolute certainty that the Confederation's perfect peace was about to be shattered. And when it was, they would need people who remembered how to fight. Jack Sullivan stared at the images Olivia had brought back. His office on Proxima Station had become a war room over the past 2 days. Star charts covered the walls, and 3 screens displayed different angles of the strange alien ship. "The Confederation has no record of this vessel," Jack said, his voice tight with concern. Olivia nodded. "I checked their entire database. Nothing matches." "That's not possible," said Sam Briggs, the former Marine who'd accompanied Olivia on her mission. "They claim to have cataloged every spacefaring species in this part of the galaxy." Jack tapped his desk thoughtfully. "Unless they're hiding something." A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal a small, gray-skinned alien with large eyes. Vora was one of the few Confederation officials who treated humans as equals rather than primitive curiosities. "Ambassador Sullivan," she said quietly, "I received your message. You said it was urgent." Jack gestured to the screens. "Do you recognize this ship?" Vora moved closer to the displays. When she saw the images, she froze. Her skin paled to an almost white color, a sign of extreme distress in her species. "Where did you find this?" she whispered. "Near the Orion Arm," Olivia replied, "where ships have been disappearing." Vora's hands trembled as she touched one of the screens. This should not be possible. They were contained centuries ago. "Who?" Jack asked. "The Exorethi." Vora looked around nervously, as if afraid of being overheard. "A species deliberately erased from our public records." "Why would the Confederation erase an entire species from its records?" Sam asked. "Because they nearly destroyed us," Vora explained. "The Exorethi are not like other species. They share a hive mind that evolves rapidly. They adapt to any threat. And the Confederation beat them." Olivia sounded skeptical. "Not beat, contained. We used our predictive algorithms to trap them in a remote system with an artificial barrier. They should not have been able to escape." Jack's communication device buzzed urgently. He tapped it, and a holographic display appeared above his desk. It showed a human colony official, his face streaked with sweat and fear. "Ambassador Sullivan, Nova Terra colony is under attack. Unknown ships are." The transmission cut off abruptly. Jack turned to Vora. "How far is Nova Terra from here?" 3 hours by fast transport," she replied, still visibly shaken. "Get me a ship," Jack ordered Olivia. "Now." By the time they reached Nova Terra, the battle was over. The colony's main city burned. Buildings lay in ruins. The Confederation defense systems had failed completely. Jack, Olivia, and a small team walked through the devastation. Bodies lay in the streets, humans and aliens alike. The colony had been home to 7,000 people. Now silence hung over everything. "This doesn't make sense," said Alan Foster, examining a destroyed defense turret. "The Confederation said their systems could stop any attack." "Their systems rely on predicting enemy tactics," Jack replied. "But what if the enemy knows those predictions?" Vora moved among the ruins, her expression haunted. "The Exorethi have evolved. They've learned to counter our defensive algorithms." "How?" Olivia demanded. "They had centuries to study us," Vora said. "While we forgot about them, they never forgot about us." A weak signal came through Jack's communicator. Other colonies were reporting similar attacks. The Confederation Council had called an emergency meeting. Jack watched as medical teams searched for survivors. Most of the Confederation representatives looked shell-shocked, unable to process what was happening. Their perfect, peaceful world was crumbling. "They have no idea how to fight a real war," Olivia said quietly, standing beside him. Jack nodded. "But we do." Later, in the emergency council meeting, alien representatives argued about response strategies. Their AI systems calculated possible defense scenarios, but each suggestion was theoretical, untested in actual combat. Jack stepped forward. "I have a proposal." The room fell silent. Ambassador Zrel gestured for him to continue. "Earth still has soldiers, real veterans who fought in real conflicts, not simulations." "What are you suggesting, Ambassador Sullivan?" asked Zrel. "The Exarathi have evolved to counter your predictive systems, but they've never faced human military tactics. We're unpredictable. We improvise. We adapt." "You want us to rely on primitive combat methods?" one alien asked incredulously. Jack looked around the room. "Your advanced methods just failed. 7,000 dead on Novaterra alone. Maybe it's time to try something primitive." The Confederation Council took 3 days to approve Jack's plan. 3 days in which 4 more colonies were attacked. Finally, with no better options, they agreed to what they called Operation Forgotten Arts. Colonel William Hart arrived at Proxima Station 1 week later. At 52, he walked with a slight limp from an old combat wound, but his eyes were sharp and his voice commanded attention. Jack had served under him years ago and knew he was the right person for this job. "Welcome to the front lines, Colonel," Jack said as they shook hands. Hart looked around at the bustling station. Aliens of various species moved with growing panic as news of more attacks spread. "Never thought I'd be training aliens to fight." "They've forgotten how," Jack explained, "or never knew in the first place." Hart nodded. "I brought the best I could find. Veterans from different conflicts, different specialties." Behind him stood 20 humans. Some were young, fresh from Earth's more recent peacekeeping missions. Others were older, with the weathered look of soldiers who had seen too much. All had actual combat experience. The training facility was a converted cargo bay. Alien representatives from 17 species gathered there, looking uncertain. Most had never held a weapon before. "Listen up," Hart called out, his voice easily filling the large space. "The Exarathi don't fight like your simulations predict. They adapt. They learn. To beat them, you'll need to do the same." An elegant bird-like alien stepped forward. "Our species has not engaged in physical combat for 12 generations. These methods seem barbaric." Hart pointed to a screen showing the destruction of Novaterra. "More barbaric than that." The alien fell silent. Senior Chief Petty Officer Diane Rodriguez took charge of small unit tactics. At 40, with dark hair streaked with gray, she had served in 3 conflicts on Earth. Now she watched as aliens attempted simple maneuvers, many struggling with the concept of covering fire. "No, no," she said to a group of tall, blue-skinned aliens. "You don't move when your calculation says it's optimal. You move when your teammate creates a distraction." "But the efficiency calculations," one began. "Forget the calculations," Rodriguez interrupted. "In real combat, your enemy won't behave according to your predictions. You need to react to what's actually happening." In another section, Alan Foster taught weapon handling. The slender, reptilian Xanti struggled to understand why they couldn't simply rely on automated targeting. "Because automated systems can be hacked or jammed," Foster explained patiently. "Manual skills are your backup." Day by day, the training progressed. Some aliens adapted quickly, embracing human combat tactics. Others resisted, clinging to their belief in technological superiority. But as news of more Exarathi attacks reached them, even the skeptics began to take the training seriously. Jack watched from an observation deck as Hart ran a combat simulation. The aliens were learning. Slowly, but they were learning. Ambassador Zrel joined him, his blue skin looking paler than usual. "The Confederation Science Council still believes we can improve our algorithms to counter the Exarathi." "How's that working so far?" Jack asked. Zrel looked away. "Not well. 3 more colonies lost contact yesterday." "Your algorithms might help eventually," Jack said. "But right now, we need soldiers who can think on their feet." On the training floor, Rodriguez was teaching a mixed group of humans and aliens how to communicate when normal channels were jammed. Hand signals, light patterns, even primitive flags. "This is how we fought before we had fancy comms," she explained. "Sometimes the old ways work best." A small gray alien raised a hand. "But what if the Exarathi learn these signals too?" Rodriguez smiled. "Then we change them. Improvise. That's what they don't understand about us." Hart joined Jack and Zrel on the observation deck. "They're making progress," he said. "But we're running out of time." "The Exarathi are moving faster than we predicted," Zrel admitted. "Our models suggest they will attack a major hub next." "We don't need models to tell us that," Hart replied. "It's basic strategy. Hit the supply lines, then go for the command centers." Jack looked at the training below. Humans teaching alien skills that Earth had hoped to leave behind as it joined the stars. Skills born from thousands of years of conflict. "How soon can they be ready?" Jack asked. Hart watched as Rodriguez corrected an alien's firing stance. "They're not soldiers yet, but they're better than nothing." "They'll have to be," Jack said. "We just got word. The Exarathi fleet is headed for Proxima Station. They'll be here in 3 days." The alarm sounded across Proxima Station exactly at 600. The Exarathi arrived early. Colonel Hart stood in the command center, surrounded by screens showing the approaching enemy fleet. 50 ships, moving in formation, their organic metal hulls gleaming in the light of nearby stars. "They're not following the approach pattern we predicted," said a Confederation tactical officer, panic in his voice. "Of course they're not," Hart replied calmly. "Get all civilians to the central shelters. Move defense teams to their positions." Jack Sullivan entered the command center, his face grim. "Are we ready for this?" Hart met his gaze. "Ready as we'll ever be." The station's automated defenses activated first. Energy weapons fired at the approaching fleet, guided by the Confederation's most advanced targeting systems. The Exarathi ships seemed to anticipate each shot, shifting position just enough to avoid direct hits. "Our targeting algorithms aren't working," the tactical officer said. "They're countering every firing solution." "Switch to manual targeting," Hart ordered. "Let the gunners make their own decisions." The alien officer stared at him. "But the efficiency will drop by." "Do it now," Hart barked. On the outer rings of the station, Rodriguez directed a mixed team of human veterans and alien trainees. She watched as the Exarathi ships approached, their movements precise and coordinated. "Remember your training," she told the nervous aliens beside her. "They adapt to patterns, so don't give them any." The first Exarathi boarding pods hit the station minutes later. They cut through the outer hull and disgorged their troops, insect-like creatures with multiple limbs and built-in weapons. Their movements were synchronized, perfect, as if controlled by a single mind. Which they were, Rodriguez knew. The hive mind made them dangerous, but it also made them predictable in some ways. The Confederation defenders at the first breach point followed their combat programs precisely. The Exarathi cut through them in minutes, anticipating every move. Rodriguez's team hit the invaders from an unexpected angle. "Random fire patterns," she shouted. "Don't aim where they are, aim where they'll be." Her alien trainees hesitated, unused to acting without calculations. The human veterans didn't. They fired in irregular bursts, moved unpredictably, shouted and created distractions. The Exarathi faltered, momentarily confused by tactics their algorithms couldn't predict. In another section, Alan Foster led a small team through maintenance tunnels, bypassing the main battle to hit the Exarathi from behind. His team included 4 aliens who had embraced human combat philosophy. Adaptability over perfection. "They expect us to defend," Foster told them. "They don't expect us to attack." Hart watched the battle unfold from the command center. The station's outer rings were taking heavy damage. In areas where Confederation forces relied on their standard tactics, they were being overrun. But where human veterans led, the defenders were holding. "We need to coordinate better," Hart said to Jack. "The Exarathi adapt quickly, but they still think as one mind. They can't handle multiple unrelated threats at once." Jack nodded. "I'll tell Rodriguez to push on Section 7. If Foster can hit them from behind at the same time, it might create enough confusion to give us an edge." Across the station, the battle rage. The Confederation soldiers who had initially retreated when their combat programs failed now watched the humans. They saw how the veterans used the environment, how they improvised weapons, how they communicated with hand signals when comms were jammed. Slowly, they began to imitate. Rodriguez found herself fighting alongside a tall, bird-like alien who had been the most skeptical during training. Now he moved unpredictably, firing at the Exarathi without waiting for optimal shots. "You're getting it," she told him as they ducked behind a collapsed wall. "Your methods are effective," he admitted. "Not perfect, but effective," she agreed. In the command center, a cheer went up. Foster's team had successfully flanked the main Exarathi force, catching them in a crossfire. At the same time, Rodriguez pushed forward from Section 7. Caught between uncoordinated attacks, the hive mind struggled to adapt. "They're falling back," someone shouted. Hart didn't smile. "They're regrouping. This isn't over." But he felt a surge of pride watching the tactical display. Human veterans, once dismissed as primitive by the Confederation, now led the defense of one of its most important hubs. And they were holding. Jack looked at Hart. "Even if we win here, there are more Exarathi out there." "One battle at a time," Hart replied. "But now we know something important." "What's that?" "The galaxy's laughing at Earth's veterans has officially stopped." 3 days after the battle at Proxima Station, the Confederation Council held an emergency meeting. Representatives from all member species attended. For the first time, humans sat at the main table, not in the observer seats. Jack Sullivan watched as analysts presented their findings. The Confederation's best minds had spent days trying to understand why their defenses had failed and how humans had succeeded where their algorithms couldn't. "The defense of Proxima Station should not have been possible," said Chief Analyst Kren, a tall, thin alien with silvery skin. "Our models predicted a complete loss within 2 hours. Yet the station held," said Ambassador Zrel. "How?" Jack stood up. "Your models couldn't predict what happened because they're based on logic and efficiency. The Exarathi have studied those models for centuries. They know exactly how to counter them." "And humans?" asked another council member. "We don't fight with perfect logic," Jack explained. "We use instinct, emotion, and unpredictability. The Exarathi couldn't anticipate our tactics because they don't follow a pattern they could learn." Colonel Hart entered the chamber. With him was Senior Chief Rodriguez and a group of Confederation soldiers who had fought alongside the humans. "The Exarathi adapt quickly," Hart said, "but they still think as one mind. When faced with multiple unpredictable threats at once, they become confused." Rodriguez stepped forward. "We've identified 3 key concepts that the Confederation forces have lost over generations: courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood." "Explain these concepts," Zrel requested. "Courage is facing fear and acting anyway," Rodriguez said. "Sacrifice is accepting personal loss for the greater good. Brotherhood is the bond between those who fight together." The council members looked confused. These ideas had no place in their efficient, algorithm-driven society. One of the Confederation soldiers spoke up. His name was Trell, from a species that resembled tall, bird-like creatures. "I fought beside Chief Rodriguez. At first, I followed my combat program. It failed. Then I watched how the humans fought. Not perfectly, but effectively." "They improvised," added another alien soldier. "They used the environment in ways no program predicted. They communicated without words." Jack nodded. "These are skills that can't be programmed. They must be learned through experience." Ambassador Zrel looked troubled. "Are you suggesting we abandon our advanced systems?" "No," Jack replied. "I'm suggesting we combine them with human combat experience. Your technology with our adaptability. The council deliberated for hours. Finally, they reached a decision that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Earth's veterans would train Confederation forces in combat tactics. A new Galactic Combat Academy would be established. Gunnery Sergeant Frank Ortega arrived at Proxima Station 1 week later. A lifetime of military service had left him with gray hair and a stern face, but his mind was sharp and his training methods effective. Now he would lead the new academy. "This place is fancy," he said as Jack showed him around. "But we'll need to rough it up a bit for proper training. The Confederation has approved whatever resources you need," Jack told him. "They're finally taking this seriously." Across the station, Rodriguez was already training more alien recruits. To her surprise, many had volunteered after hearing about the success at Proxima. "Your species has an unusual relationship with danger," said Kel, a reptilian alien learning to disassemble and clean a weapon. "You accept it rather than trying to eliminate it completely." Rodriguez smiled. "We learned long ago that trying to make life perfectly safe is impossible. Better to prepare for danger than pretend it doesn't exist." In the command center, Hart reviewed tactical data with Confederation officers. The screen showed Serathi movements across 3 sectors. "They're regrouping," he explained. "But they're also changing tactics based on what they learned at Proxima." "How can we predict their next move?" asked a Confederation tactician. "We don't," Hart replied. "We prepare for multiple possibilities and stay flexible." The tactician frowned. "That seems inefficient." "War is inefficient," Hart said simply. "That's something your society forgot." Later, Jack met with Ortega and Hart to discuss the growing program. What had started as a desperate measure was becoming something more, a fusion of Confederation technology and human experience. "They're calling it the Veterans' Advantage now," Jack told them. "Your training methods are being requested across the Confederation." Hart looked out at the stars through a viewport. "They mocked us for being primitive. Now they're learning there's wisdom in our so-called primitive ways." "The galaxy's not laughing anymore," Ortega said. "They're listening." 2 months after the Battle of Proxima Station, Admiral Kelly Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Confederation flagship Celestial Dawn. At 48, she had commanded Earth naval vessels for over 20 years before being asked to lead the first Confederation counter-offensive against the Exorethi. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her second-in-command, a blue-skinned Zora named Tellus. Blackwood nodded. "Signal the fleet. Jump in 5 minutes." Around the Celestial Dawn, 80 warships prepared for faster-than-light travel. 1/3 were crewed by humans, the rest by various Confederation species who had trained under Earth veterans. This would be their first major offensive operation, a strike at the heart of Exorethi territory. "The Exorethi outnumber us 3-1, Tellus noted, reviewing the intelligence reports. "Numbers aren't everything," Blackwood replied. "We have surprise and unconventional tactics on our side." Jack Sullivan and Colonel Hart watched from a command station as the fleet disappeared into jump space. The plan had been months in the making. A daring strike that went against conventional Confederation military doctrine. "Will it work?" asked Ambassador Zrell, who stood beside them. "In a traditional engagement, no," Hart admitted. "But this isn't traditional." The fleet emerged from jump space 6 hours later, not at the main Exorethi stronghold where defenses would be heaviest, but at a smaller outpost that intelligence suggested was a key communication node. "Deploy strike teams," Blackwood ordered. "Remember, we're not here to hold territory. We're here to disrupt their network." Lieutenant Commander Paul Rice led the first team of Special Forces toward the Exorethi installation. His squad included 4 humans and 3 aliens who had excelled in training. They moved quickly, using stealth technology to approach the organic metal structures of the Exorethi base. "Remember, the Exorethi think as one," Rice reminded his team. "Cut off this node, and we create confusion across their network." Inside the Celestial Dawn, Blackwood watched as the fleet engaged Exorethi defenders. The enemy responded quickly, but not as quickly as they had at Proxima Station. The humans had chosen their target well. A critical point, but not one the Exarathi expected to be attacked. "They're adapting to our attack pattern," warned the tactical officer. "Changing formation to counter our movements. Execute random pattern theta," Blackwood ordered. No predictable movements. The Confederation ships broke formation, each following pre-planned but seemingly random paths. The Exarathi struggled to adapt to what appeared to be chaos, but was actually a carefully designed unpredictability. On the surface, Reyes and his team reached the central structure. They planted explosive charges at key points, following a pattern designed to cause maximum disruption with minimum force. 2 minutes to detonation, Reyes said. Move to extraction point. Suddenly, all communications went dead. The team couldn't contact the fleet or each other on their devices. "They've jammed us," said Sergeant Liu, one of the human team members. The alien members looked to Reyes, uncertainty in their eyes. In previous Confederation operations, a communication blackout would have meant retreat according to pre-programmed protocols. "We continue the mission," Reyes said firmly. "Remember your training. Use visual signals." Using hand gestures and light patterns they had practiced, the team coordinated their movements. They adapted their route when they encountered unexpected resistance, not following a set plan but responding to the situation as it evolved. Above them, the space battle intensified. 3 Confederation ships had been destroyed, but the fleet had taken out 7 Exarathi vessels. More importantly, they kept changing tactics, preventing the hive mind from developing an effective counter-strategy. "Assault team has gone silent," reported Tellus. "Should we abort the mission?" Blackwood studied the tactical display. "No, we trust them to complete their objective. Without communication, that's what they trained for." The explosion, when it came, was visible from orbit. The Exarathi structure erupted in blue-green fire as its power core overloaded. Almost immediately, the Exarathi fleet's coordination faltered. "It worked," Tellus said, amazement in his voice. "Their network is disrupted." Blackwood nodded. "Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 2. Hours later, Reyes and 4 of his team members were recovered by rescue shuttles. They had lost 2 soldiers but completed their mission. The Exarathi outpost was destroyed, and with it, a significant portion of the hive mind's coordination ability. Back at Confederation headquarters, Jack received the news with mixed emotions. The operation had succeeded, but at a cost. 27 ships and over 300 lives lost. By Confederation standards, it was a heavy toll. By human military standards, it was an acceptable sacrifice for such a critical victory. "Your Admiral Blackwood has done the impossible," Zrel told him. "She has given us the first major victory against the Exarathi." "Not impossible," Jack corrected him. "Just something your simulations couldn't predict."